The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The streets were quiet, except for the occasional sound of cars passing by. Inside a small diner on the edge of town, Sarah sat alone at a corner table. Her hands wrapped tightly around a warm cup of coffee that had long gone cold. She stared blankly out the window, her thoughts heavy with worry. Life hadn't been kind to her lately. Sarah used to be a nurse, a good one too. People trusted her, relied on her during their toughest moments. But things changed when the hospital where she worked decided to cut costs. Dozens of employees, including Sarah, lost their jobs overnight. For weeks, she searched tirelessly for new opportunities, but nothing seemed to work out. Bills piled up, and her savings dwindled faster than she could have imagined. It felt like the world was closing in on her, leaving her stranded without direction. The diner was almost empty tonight, which suited Sarah just fine. She didn't feel like talking to anyone. All she wanted was some time alone, away from the chaos of her life. The only sounds filling the room came from the old jukebox in the corner, playing soft tunes from decades past. A waitress moved lazily between tables, wiping down surfaces even though there weren't many customers to serve. Just as Sarah was about to signal for the check, the door opened with a faint jingle. A man stepped inside, his presence immediately drawing her attention. He wasn't like the usual patrons who frequented this place. His clothes were dirty, torn at the edges, and his face looked pale, almost ghostly. Dark circles hung under his eyes, and his hair was disheveled, sticking out in odd directions. He glanced around nervously as if unsure whether he should stay or leave. Something about him tugged at Sarah's heartstrings. Maybe it was the way he looked so lost, so vulnerable. Or maybe it was because she understood what it felt like to be desperate, to need help but not know where to find it. Whatever the reason, she couldn't tear her gaze away from him. The man hesitated for a moment before making his way to a table near the back. He slouched into the seat, resting his elbows on the table and burying his face in his hands. When the waitress approached him, he ordered a glass of water but fumbled with it awkwardly once it arrived, spilling half of it onto the table. Sarah watched silently, her instincts kicking in. She might not have been working as a nurse anymore, but caring for others was second nature to her. Without giving it much thought, she stood up and walked over to his table. "Excuse me," she said softly, trying not to startle him. The man looked up, startled indeed. His eyes darted around the room before finally settling on her. They were wide, filled with fear and exhaustion. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I noticed you seem upset." Sarah replied gently, "Is everything okay?" He hesitated, clearly unsure whether to trust her. After a moment, he shook his head. "No," he admitted. "Not really." Sarah pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. "Do you want to talk about it?" she offered. For a while, the man just stared at her, as if weighing his options. Finally, he sighed heavily. "I don't think you'd believe me if I told you," he muttered. "You'd be surprised," Sarah said with a small smile. "Sometimes all someone needs is someone willing to listen." Her words seemed to break through whatever barrier he'd put up. Slowly, he began to speak, though his sentences were fragmented and vague. He mentioned running away, being chased, and needing to disappear. Sarah listened intently, piecing together bits of his story. While she didn't fully understand what he was going through, she could tell he was in trouble, and that he needed help. When the waitress returned to check on him, Sarah took charge. "Bring him something to eat," she instructed, "and make sure it's hearty. He looks like he hasn't eaten in days." The waitress nodded and hurried off to prepare the order. Meanwhile, Sarah stayed seated, keeping the man company. She asked simple questions, his name, where he was headed, but he avoided answering directly. Instead, he thanked her repeatedly, his gratitude evident despite his guarded demeanor. Once the food arrived, the man ate quickly, as if afraid someone might take it away from him. Sarah watched quietly, noticing how thin he was beneath his oversized jacket. When he finished, she leaned forward slightly, If you need a ride somewhere, I can help, she offered. He froze, his fork hovering midair. Why would you do that? He asked suspiciously. Because everyone deserves a chance, Sarah replied simply, and because helping people is what I do. After a long pause, the man nodded reluctantly. Okay, he whispered. Thank you. They left the diner together a short while later. Sarah drove cautiously, glancing at her passenger every now and then. He stared straight ahead, gripping the edge of his seat tightly. Though he didn't say much, she could sense his tension, easing ever so slightly. When they reached his destination, an old motel on the outskirts of town, he turned to her with a mixture of relief and gratitude. I won't forget this, he promised. You saved me tonight. Sarah smiled warmly. Take care of yourself, she said. Then, without expecting anything in return, she drove off into the night. Little did she know, her act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. The next morning, Sarah woke up groggily, her mind still replaying the events of the previous night. She had helped a stranger at the diner, someone who seemed desperate and scared. But why did she feel like it wasn't just an ordinary act of kindness? Something about him lingered in her thoughts, gnawing at the edges of her mind. She stretched lazily and got out of bed, deciding to make herself breakfast before starting another day of job hunting. As she cracked eggs into a pan, a sharp knock echoed through her small apartment. Startled, she turned off the stove and walked to the door. Peering through the peephole, Sarah saw a man standing outside. He was dressed in a crisp black suit, his posture perfectly straight. Beside him stood a sleek black limousine, its shiny surface gleaming under the morning sun. Confused, Sarah opened the door cautiously. Yes? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The man smiled politely and held out a small card. Miss Sarah, he said, his tone formal yet warm. Please come with me. Sarah blinked, unsure if she'd heard him correctly. Come with you? Who sent you? I'm here on behalf of someone who wishes to thank you, the man replied cryptically. For what? Sarah pressed, feeling more puzzled by the second. The chauffeur simply gestured toward the limo. All will be explained shortly, her curiosity outweighed her skepticism. Against her better judgment, Sarah grabbed her jacket and stepped outside. The chauffeur opened the car door for her, and she slid inside, marveling at the luxurious interior. Leather seats, polished wood accents, and a faint scent of fresh flowers greeted her. As the car pulled away from the curb, Sarah couldn't help but wonder where they were headed. The chauffeur remained silent, focusing on the road as they drove, through winding streets lined with towering trees. After nearly 20 minutes, they arrived at a massive estate surrounded by high iron gates. The gates swung open automatically, revealing a sprawling mansion that looked like something out of a movie. Sarah's eyes widened in awe as the limo glided up the driveway and came to a stop in front of the grand entrance. A valet opened her door and she stepped out, feeling completely out of place in her casual jeans and sneakers. Before she could ask any questions, the front door opened and a familiar figure emerged. It was the man from the diner, the one she had helped last night. Only now he looked completely different. His clothes were clean and expensive, his hair neatly combed, and his face no longer pale or haggard. Sarah, he said warmly, extending a hand. Thank you for coming. You're welcome, she replied hesitantly. But what's going on? He gestured for her to follow him inside. Let's talk somewhere private. They entered the mansion, which was even more impressive, on the inside. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting soft light across marble floors. Expensive artwork adorned the walls, and plush furniture filled every room. Sarah felt like she had stepped into another world entirely. Finally, they reached a study, a cozy yet sophisticated space with shelves lined with books and a large desk in the center. The man motioned for her to sit, then took a seat across from her. My name is Elias Grayson, he began, his tone serious, and I owe you my life. Sarah frowned, confused. What do you mean? Elias leaned forward slightly. Last night when I met you at the diner, I wasn't just tired or hungry, I was running for my life. Running from what? Sarah asked, her heart beginning to race. That's a complicated question, Elias admitted. But suffice it to say there are forces out there far greater than we can imagine. Forces that would stop at nothing to get their hands on certain information. Sarah stared at him, trying to process his words. Information? What kind of information? Elias hesitated as if weighing how much to reveal. Finally, he sighed. I work for a secret organization, one tasked with protecting Earth from threats beyond our understanding. Sarah's eyebrows shot up. You mean aliens? Elias nodded grimly. Yes. For years, humanity has been under constant surveillance by extraterrestrial civilizations. Most of them observe us quietly, but some are hostile. One such species, the Krylos, has grown increasingly aggressive. They see Earth as vulnerable and ripe for conquest. Sarah's mouth dropped open. This sounded like something out of a sci-fi movie, not real life. Are you serious right now? I wish I weren't, Elias replied. But yes, I am. And last night, I was carrying critical data that could tip the scales in our favor if I hadn't found someone like you. If you hadn't helped me, I might not have made it. Sarah shook her head, still struggling to believe what she was hearing. Why me? Why did you choose me? It wasn't a choice, Elias explained. You acted out of pure kindness without expecting anything in return. That's rare these days, and it's exactly the kind of quality we need moving forward. Moving forward, Sarah thought. What does that even mean? As if reading her mind, Elias stood up and walked to a nearby wall. Pressing a hidden button, he revealed a hidden room behind a panel. Inside, screens displayed maps, satellite images, and strange symbols Sarah didn't recognize. In the corner, a holographic projection showed blueprints of futuristic spacecraft. This is our command center, Elias said, turning back to her. Here we monitor alien activity and prepare defenses. But we can't do it alone. We need people like you. People who care deeply about others and aren't afraid to step up when it matters most. Sarah's head spun. She had gone from being an unemployed nurse to sitting in a secret base discussing alien invasions. It all felt surreal, like a dream she would wake up from any moment. But what about me? She asked finally. I'm just me. How can I possibly help with something like this? Elias smiled reassuringly. You underestimate yourself, Sarah. Your skills as a nurse, your compassion, your ability to stay calm under pressure. All of those qualities make you invaluable. Besides, we'll train you. You won't be alone. Sarah sat silently, letting everything sink in. On one hand, this whole situation was insane. Aliens, secret organizations, starships. It sounded impossible. But on the other hand, part of her wanted to believe. Maybe helping strangers at diners wasn't just random acts of kindness, it was fate leading her here. What happens next? She asked softly. Elias extended a hand once again. That depends on you. If you're willing, we'll start preparing immediately. Humanity's survival may depend on it. Sarah hesitated for only a moment before taking his hand. Okay, she said firmly. I'm in. Little did she know, agreeing to join Elias would thrust her into a world unlike anything she'd ever known and set her on a path toward greatness. Sarah's decision to join Elias felt like stepping off a cliff. She didn't know what awaited her, but she trusted that helping others, even if it meant risking her life, was the right thing to do. Over the next few days, Elias introduced her to the inner workings of the organization he represented. It was called the Sentinel Initiative, a secretive group dedicated to protecting Earth from extraterrestrial threats. At first, everything overwhelmed her. The headquarters wasn't just a mansion, it was a sprawling underground facility hidden beneath layers of rock and concrete. Elevators led deep underground, where corridors stretched endlessly, lined with high-tech equipment and bustling staff members. Scientists, engineers, pilots, and strategists worked tirelessly, their faces etched with determination. Elias gave Sarah a tour, explaining each section as they walked. "This is our intelligence hub," he said, pointing to a room filled with glowing screens and analysts typing furiously. "Here we track alien activity across the globe. Every unexplained sighting, every anomaly, it all gets logged and analyzed." Sarah peered at one screen showing satellite footage of strange lights hovering near military bases. "Are those UFOs?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Elias confirmed. "Most are harmless drones sent by curious species, but some belong to the Krylos, the hostile race I mentioned earlier. They've been probing our defenses for months now, testing how far they can push us." As they moved deeper into the facility, Sarah saw more advanced technology than she could have imagined. There were labs where scientists reverse-engineered alien artifacts, training rooms equipped with holographic simulations, and even medical bays stocked with futuristic devices designed for space travel. "This is incredible," Sarah murmured, her eyes wide with wonder. "How has no one discovered this place?" "We've had centuries to perfect secrecy," Elias replied. "Our existence depends on staying hidden, not just from the public, but also from potential enemies within humanity itself." Eventually, they reached a large auditorium where a briefing was about to take place. Dozens of people gathered around, a central table displaying a holographic map of Earth surrounded by swirling icons representing alien ships. Sarah recognized some of them from the screens upstairs. They were getting closer. A tall woman with sharp features stood at the front of the room. Her name was Commander Vega, and she radiated authority. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice firm and commanding. "As you know, tensions between Earth and the Krylos have escalated significantly. Their fleet is amassing near Saturn's orbit, preparing for an invasion." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. An invasion? Was humanity really facing extinction? Commander Vega continued. "Thanks to recent breakthroughs, we've managed to decode fragments of their communication signals. They believe Earth is weak, a divided planet incapable of mounting resistance. We must prove them wrong." She gestured toward the hologram which zoomed out to reveal Earth's own fleet of starships. "These are our destroyers, hidden beneath the oceans until now. Equipped with cutting-edge weaponry and shields, they're humanity's best chance at survival. But operating them requires skilled personnel. That's why we've brought everyone here today." Sarah glanced at Elias, who nodded encouragingly. He had already explained that her role wouldn't involve combat directly, but rather supporting the crew medically. Still, the thought of boarding a spaceship terrified her. After the briefing, Elias took Sarah to meet the team she'd be working with. They were an eclectic mix of individuals, each bringing unique skills to the table. There was Dr. Lin, a brilliant scientist specializing in alien biology, Captain Ramirez, a seasoned pilot with nerves of steel, and Marcus, a tech expert who could hack into almost anything. "Welcome aboard," Captain Ramirez said with a grin when Sarah joined them. "Don't worry. We'll make sure you're ready for whatever comes our way." Over the following weeks, Sarah underwent rigorous training. At first, she struggled to keep up. Simulations tested her ability to treat injuries caused by energy, weapons, zero-gravity environments, and exposure to alien toxins. Medical pods replaced traditional tools, requiring her to learn entirely new techniques. But Sarah refused to give up. Drawing on her experience as a nurse, she adapted quickly. She studied manuals late into the night, practiced procedures over and over, and sought advice from Dr. Lin whenever she felt stuck. Slowly but surely, she gained confidence. Meanwhile, tensions outside the facility grew worse. Reports poured in daily of Krylos ships appearing in Earth's atmosphere. Government scrambled to respond, though most remained unaware of the Sentinel Initiative. Panic spread among civilians, leading to riots and chaos in major cities. One evening, as Sarah reviewed notes in her quarters, Elias knocked on her door. "We need to talk," he said gravely. She followed him to a secure conference room, where Commander Vega and several other leaders waited. On the main screen, live footage showed dozens of Krylos vessels descending toward Earth. Bright beams of light shot down, targeting military installations and power grids. Explosions lit up the horizon, turning night into day. They're attacking, Commander Vega announced, her expression grim. It's happening sooner than we anticipated. What do we do? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. We fight back, Elias replied. His tone left no room for doubt. Vega turned to address the group. Our destroyers will launch within the hour. Each ship carries a skeleton crew, enough to operate effectively while maintaining stealth. Once we engage the enemy, humanity's fate rests in your hands. Sarah swallowed hard. This was it, the moment she'd been preparing for. Though fear gripped her heart, she reminded herself why she'd chosen this path. To protect innocent lives, to stand up for those who couldn't defend themselves. As the countdown began, Sarah suited up alongside her teammates. Her uniform fit snugly, emblazoned with the emblem of the Sentinel Initiative. Around her, others checked their gear, exchanged final words, or simply stared ahead, lost in thought. When the time came, they boarded the destroyer assigned to them, a massive vessel codenamed Aegis 1. Its sleek design gleamed under artificial lights, bristling with cannons and shield generators. As the hatch closed behind them, Sarah took a deep breath. Captain Ramirez addressed the crew over the intercom. Listen up, everyone. Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for every person on this planet. Let's show the universe what humanity is made of. With a deafening roar, Aegis 1 ascended through the water, breaking the surface and soaring into the sky. Outside the windows, stars twinkled against the vast expanse of space. Below, Earth glowed faintly, its beauty both fragile and awe-inspiring. Sarah strapped herself into her station, ready to face whatever lay ahead. For the first time in weeks, she felt truly alive. Whatever happened next, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. As Aegis 1 soared through Earth's atmosphere, Sarah gripped the edge of her seat tightly. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing louder than the hum of the engines around her. Outside the windows, the vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly, dotted with stars that seemed impossibly far away. But there was no time to marvel at the view. Ahead of them loomed the enemy, the Krylos fleet, a swarm of menacing ships that glowed with an eerie green light. Commander, Vega's voice crackled over the intercom. All units, prepare for engagement. Remember, we're outnumbered but not outmatched. Stay focused, stay sharp. Sarah glanced at her teammates who were already busy at their stations. Captain Ramirez piloted the ship with steady hands, his eyes fixed on the controls. Dr. Lin monitored systems nearby, ensuring all medical pods were operational in case of injuries. Marcus typed furiously on his console, hacking into the Krylos communication network to gather intel. And then there was Sarah. Though she wasn't directly involved in combat, her role was just as critical. She manned the medical bay, ready to treat anyone hurt during the battle. The thought terrified her. What if someone died because she couldn't act fast enough? But she pushed those fears aside. Now wasn't the time to doubt herself. The destroyer shuddered slightly as it entered the battlefield. Dozens of human ships emerged from beneath Earth's oceans, rising like guardians to protect their home. Each vessel bristled with weapons, capable of piercing even the strongest alien shields. For a moment, the sight filled Sarah with hope. Humanity might be smaller and less advanced, but they weren't defenseless. Engaging the enemy, Captain Ramirez announced. Without warning, beams of red and blue light streaked across the void as both sides opened fire. Explosions illuminated the darkness, sending shockwaves rippling through space. Sarah watched in awe and terror as debris from destroyed ships floated aimlessly, a grim reminder of the stakes. Inside, Aegis 1, alarms blared as the ship took its first hit. A section of the hull breached, causing oxygen levels to drop momentarily. Crew members scrambled to seal the damage while others returned fire. Sarah stayed glued to her station, monitoring vital signs and preparing emergency kits. "Casualty incoming!" Dr. Lin shouted suddenly. Seconds later, 2 crew members stumbled into the medical bay, clutching wounds caused by flying shrapnel. Sarah sprang into action, guiding them to separate pods. She activated one machine, which scanned the first patient's body, and began stitching internal injuries automatically. Meanwhile, she manually treated the second, applying pressure to stop the bleeding before bandaging the wound. Her hands moved quickly, almost instinctively. Years of nursing experience kicked in, helping her stay calm despite the chaos surrounding her. When both patients stabilized, she exhaled sharply, allowing herself a brief moment of relief. But the battle raged on outside. Through the viewport, Sarah could see the Krylos flagship, a colossal vessel larger than any other ship in the fight. It hovered ominously at the center of the enemy formation, directing attacks with precision. If humanity wanted to win, they needed to take it down. "We've located their weak point," Marcus reported excitedly. "There's a vulnerable spot near the engine core. One well-placed shot should disable it." Captain Ramirez nodded. "All units, focus fire on the flagship. Repeat, target the engine core." Human ships adjusted their trajectories, converging on the massive alien craft. Lasers and missiles flew in unison, battering its thick armor. Slowly but surely, cracks began to form along its surface. Inside, Aegis 1, tension mounted. Every blast shook the ship violently, threatening to throw everyone off balance. Sarah clung to her station, praying silently that they'd make it through alive. Suddenly, a deafening explosion rocked the destroyer. Sarah fell to the floor, her ears ringing as sparks flew from damaged equipment. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to breathe. "What happened?" She coughed, struggling to stand. "One of their cruisers fired directly at us," Dr. Lin replied, helping her up. "We've lost propulsion temporarily." Sarah's stomach sank. Without propulsion, they were sitting ducks. Any moment now, another attack could finish them off. "Marcus, reroute power to the thrusters," Captain Ramirez barked. "I'm trying," Marcus yelled back, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "It's going to take a minute." Time seemed to slow down. Seconds felt like hours as the crew worked frantically to restore functionality. Outside, the Krylos cruiser circled closer, preparing for another strike. Just when it seemed hopeless, Marcus let out a triumphant shout. "Got it! Thrusters are back online!" Captain Ramirez wasted no time. With renewed speed, Aegis 1 darted out of harm's way, narrowly avoiding another devastating hit. Cheers erupted among the crew, though they knew the fight wasn't over yet. Back on the main screen, the Krylos flagship continued to take heavy damage. Human ships poured everything they had into targeting its weak point. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a brilliant flash lit up the battlefield. The flagship exploded in a fiery burst, sending fragments spiraling into space. The enemy fleet faltered, their coordination crumbling without their leader. One by one, remaining, Krylos ships retreated, fleeing deeper into the galaxy. Cheers erupted throughout Aegis 1. Crew members hugged each other, tears streaming down their faces. Against all odds, humanity had won. Sarah leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by exhaustion and emotion. She looked around at her teammates, realizing how much they had accomplished. Together. They weren't soldiers or superheroes. They were ordinary people who had risen to meet extraordinary challenges. When the adrenaline wore off, reality set in. Earth had survived this time, but the war wasn't truly over. Somewhere out there, the Krylos would regroup and plan their next move. Humanity needed to stay vigilant, stronger than ever before. For now, though, there was peace and a chance to heal. As Aegis 1 began its descent back toward Earth, Sarah gazed out the window once more. Below, the planet sparkled like a jewel, its beauty undiminished by the horrors it had endured. She smiled softly, knowing she had played a small part in protecting it. Whatever came next, she was ready. The return to Earth was nothing short of triumphant. As Aegis 1 descended through the atmosphere, Sarah pressed her face against the window, watching as familiar landscapes came into view. The blue oceans, green forests, and sprawling cities below seemed more precious than ever before. After witnessing the vast emptiness of space and the terror of battle, she realized how fragile yet beautiful her home truly was. When the destroyer landed at a secret military base, the crew was greeted by cheers from ground personnel. News of humanity's victory had spread quickly, sparking celebrations worldwide. People poured into the streets waving flags and lighting fireworks. For the first time in weeks, hope replaced fear. Sarah stepped off the ship alongside her teammates, feeling a mix of pride and exhaustion. Her uniform was singed in places. Her body ached from hours of tension. But none of that mattered. She had helped save Earth, and that knowledge filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Commander Vega approached them, her stern expression softening slightly. "You've all done an incredible job," she said. "Today, you proved that humanity is stronger together than we are apart." Captain Ramirez grinned, clapping Marcus on the back. "Couldn't have done it without this guy hacking their systems," he joked. "And without Sarah keeping us alive," Dr. Lin added, nodding toward her. Sarah blushed, unused to being praised so openly. "I just did what I could," she murmured. Modestly, Elias stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "What you did wasn't just anything," he said firmly. "You saved lives, not just today, but every day since you joined us. That's something to be proud of." His words stayed with her long after the ceremony ended. Over the next few days, life began to settle back into a semblance of normalcy. Governments worked to repair damaged infrastructure, while scientists analyzed data collected during the battle. Though the immediate threat had passed, everyone knew the Krylos might return one day. Humanity needed to stay prepared. For Sarah, returning to civilian life felt strange. She resumed nursing at a local clinic, treating patients who had no idea of the battles she'd fought or the sacrifices she'd made. At first, she wondered if she'd made the right choice coming back, but soon she found comfort in helping others again. Still, things were different now. Sarah carried herself with newfound confidence, knowing she could handle whatever challenges came her way. Her experience aboard Aegis I had changed her, teaching her that even ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things when they worked together. One evening, as she walked home from work, a sleek black car pulled up beside her. The chauffeur stepped out, opening the door with a polite smile. "Miss Sarah," he said, "Mr. Grayson would like to see you." Curiosity piqued, Sarah climbed inside. The car drove her to Elias's mansion, where he greeted her warmly. "I hear you've been doing well," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "I'm trying," she replied with a small laugh. "It's different going back to everyday life after everything that happened." Elias nodded knowingly. "It always is, but your work isn't finished, Sarah. Not entirely." She frowned, unsure what he meant. "What do you mean?" "The Krylos may have retreated, but they're not gone," he explained. "And there are other species out there, some friendly, some hostile. We need people like you to continue protecting Earth, to prepare for whatever comes next." Sarah hesitated, weighing his words. Part of her wanted nothing more than to leave the danger behind and live a quiet life. But another part, the part that had thrived aboard Aegis I, knew she couldn't turn away. "What would I do?" she asked finally. "You'd train others," Elias replied. "Share what you've learned. Help build a better defense system. Maybe even explore beyond Earth someday." The idea excited her more than she cared to admit. Exploring the stars, meeting alien civilizations, it sounded like something out of a dream. "I'll think about it," she promised. Over the following months, Sarah divided her time between nursing and working with the Sentinel Initiative. She traveled to training facilities around the world, teaching recruits how to treat injuries in zero gravity and use advanced medical technology. Along the way, she inspired countless others with stories of courage and teamwork. Her evenings were often spent gazing at the stars, wondering what mysteries lay beyond. Occasionally, she received updates from Elias about new discoveries, strange signals intercepted from distant galaxies, artifacts recovered from crashed alien ships. Each revelation fueled her curiosity, reminding her how much there was still to learn. One night, as she stood on her balcony, a shooting star streaked across the sky. She closed her eyes, making a silent wish. When she opened them again, she noticed something unusual, a faint glow hovering near the horizon. It looked like a spaceship. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be real, or was her imagination playing tricks on her. Before she could decide, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Elias. "Pack your bags. Something's waiting for you." Sarah smiled, feeling a thrill of anticipation. Whatever awaited her, she was ready.